Alrighty, pushers. It's a time for another episode of Mr. B, AP US History. On today's episode, the U.S. Constitution of 1787. We got a quote from the preamble of the U.S. Constitution to start off the show. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Beautiful. On to the notes. The U.S. Constitution of 1787 was controversial from the beginning, created a new two-level political federation using a new concept called federalism. Federalism is the sharing of power between a national government and a state government. That's a federal government and a state government. National government has limited delegated powers. State governments retain authority over everything else. The rise of nationalist factions, money questions, rich people from all the colonies wanted a strong central government to control debt, taxes, tariffs, and prevent rebellions, such as Shays' Rebellion. They were worried about their stuff, and they were worried about democracy. Philadelphia Convention, 1787. 55 delegates came from every state except Rhode Island. Who are these people? They're rich, they're educated, they're merchants, slave-holding planters. There was only one yeoman farmer. George Washington was elected as the president of the Constitutional Convention. He presided over the convention because he said we needed a stronger central government. Instead of revising the Articles of Confederation, they decided to replace them with a new constitution. People came up with some plans. Virginia came up with a plan. New Jersey came up with a plan. The Virginia plan was created by James Madison. He based representation based on population, Virginia being a large and populous state. They thought it only fair and proper that representation be based on how many people you had in your state. New Jersey, being a small state with very few people, did not like this plan. They proposed one vote per state, very similar to the Articles of Confederation, where each state would be equal. The Great Compromise, or the Kinetic Compromise. The U.S. Constitution is a bundle of compromises. A compromise is when two people agree to disagree, and they come up with a solution that doesn't make either one happy, but doesn't make either one mad. The Great Compromise was the one between these two forms of representation. The compromise was this: a bicameral legislature. Bicameral meaning two houses. An upper house, which is called the Senate, which has 2 members per state, very similar to the New Jersey plan. The lower house, the House of Representatives, would be apportioned by population every 10 years. This is very similar to the Virginia plan. This is why every 10 years from 1790, there's going to be a census or a count of all the people to determine how many states or how many representatives per each state there is. The Great Compromise. The Three-Fifths Compromise. This is a compromise over slavery. Congress would not be able to regulate immigration or the slave trade until 1808. That's 20 years. For the purpose of representation and taxation, slaves would count as 60% of a person. This was a bow to Virginia wanting to count their slaves as people for the purpose of representation. It was a compromise. It did not make anyone happy. National authority or federalism. Constitution was the supreme law of the land. It had the power to tax, the power to raise an army and navy, to regulate foreign and interstate commerce, and the authority to make all laws necessary and proper to function, which is the Necessary and Proper Clause, also known as Article 1, Section 8, aka the Elastic Clause. This will be used to give all sorts of power to the national or federal government. Again, this sharing of power between the states and the federal government was not exactly completely understood or spelled out, and people would disagree on how much power each one should have. The people debate ratification. Ratification, it means approval. Ratification of the new Constitution needed 9 out of 13 states instead of 13 out of 13. So they only had to get 9 out of 13. The Federalists, a group, they argued in favor of ratifying the new Constitution. There was other people, the Anti-Federalists. They were against ratifying the new Constitution. Why? The Anti-Federalists feared loss of state power. There was no protection for individual rights. They feared a central government would be run by the rich, for the rich, by the rich, and wanted to keep the government close to the people. Republican institutions work best for small polities. They feared a recreation of British rule which was high taxes, oppressive bureaucracy, a standing army, and a great and mighty president with executive powers. This was their fears, and they argued we should not have a new constitution. The Federalists, led by none other than Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay, they defended the U.S. Constitution in a series of 85 essays called The Federalist Papers, mostly wrote by Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. James Madison being considered the father of the U.S. Constitution. They wrote the Federalist Papers, 85 essays that explained to the people the concepts that were in the U.S. Constitution, including separation of powers, the idea that the powers of government, the power to make the laws, enforce the laws, and settle disputes, would be divided into three branches. Federalism, the idea that power would be fairly divided between a national government and a state government, and then a systems of checks and balances to keep everything in order so that one branch would not become too powerful, such as the president being able to veto legislation passed by the legislative branch, or the Supreme Court being able to declare laws unconstitutional, would be an example of checks and balances. Federalist number 10, one of the famous of the 85 essays, Federalist number 10, explained the benefits of a large republic and the role of factions being political parties. The Federalists promised to add a Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution to protect individual freedoms. With this promise, this convinced enough anti-Federalists to say, okay, fine, we'll do it. And so the U.S. Constitution was ratified in 1787. And that's it. That's the U.S. Constitution. I hope you appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell for notification. Tell your friends and your friends' friends that this is Mr. BAP US History, the best place to get notes for all your A-push needs. Until next time, this is Mr. BAP US History. Peace out.